Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're listening to this podcast. This is the Word 111 Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Cater Powell, here with
Colin Neal
and Chance Corson.
Today we're going to be discussing NIL and how it affects the college football landscape. First things first, what is NIL? It's a fairly new concept, and according to the NCSA College Recruiting Board, the NIL is a new policy that allows NCAA athletes Division I, Division II, and Division III to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. In my opinion, I'm a big fan of NIL. I think it's important that these student athletes get paid because other than this, they don't have a way to get paid during college. A lot of students pick up a part-time job to have some spending money, and these athletes don't get that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think in the past there has been almost no way for NCAA athletes to profit off their name, and there have even been a lot of athletes that have gotten in trouble for it. And when you consider how much money the NCAA brings in every year because of these athletes, I think it would be super unfair for them not to let them profit off of that. There is some backlash to it just with how colleges can lure you because of their NIL value, but overall I think it's a good thing that's happening.
I personally dislike NIL. I feel like it is ruining college athletics. You only look at like the big schools. You got the Georgias, Alabamas, Texas. Like they're just bringing in millions of dollars every single year, and they're paying these athletes so much money. And like small schools cannot compete. It's not like fair. Like some schools are never going to be as good because they're not bringing in the big money like Alabama and Georgia is every single year.
Do you think that the NCAA should step in and set a regulated amount an athlete should be able to earn? Athletes should be able to earn?
Yes, they have to do something. They have to change something because, like, you can't be paying some players like $1 million for them to transfer over whenever some schools don't even have that to, like, fund their school. So they should have, like, a regulation so all schools can meet the budget.
I agree with that. It's just with how recruiting is now, you're naturally going to overload the schools that have more money that were possibly already bringing in plenty of good athletes, and it's not a very good balance for small schools or schools that are in wealthy areas. But I think there is an equal opportunity to individual players, whereas if they're a really good player on maybe a small team, then they may earn more than their teammates, which could cause some jealousy, but it's still a good opportunity for them.
Even though I think NIL is a good thing for college athletics, what I don't like is how it's going to be taken away from smaller athletes who are trying to get into colleges, especially at the high school level. Since the transfer portal is opened up alongside NIL, and for those of you who don't know what the transfer portal is, it's just a place where athletes go to transfer from team to team if they don't like their playing time, if they don't like their coaches, things like that. And I think that the transfer portal is now the number one recruiting spot for athletes, for schools to take, instead of looking at high school. And I think that's going to take a lot of opportunities away from high school players who could become stars given the right circumstances.
I think I agree with that. But there is an advantage to the transfer portal where I don't really think that an athlete should have to sit out a year just because they want to transfer schools if they have a bad situation with a coaching change or maybe they're having some personal issues or just not getting enough playing time. I think it is unfair for some athletes to transfer to other schools through the transfer portal just because of NIL money. And I don't really think that's fair when you have to recruit your athletes out of high school and then you have to re-recruit them almost every season.
Going back on your high school point, I agree. Like, I feel like it's, like, smart for colleges to not look at high schoolers at this point in, like, college because, like, why would you take some small player that doesn't know anything about college athletics and then try to, like, say he's better than a college athlete that's already been playing for 3 years? So it just doesn't make sense to take a high school athlete that's undeveloped whenever you could already take a college athlete that knows what they're doing.
I think you're right. And with coaches being forced to win almost immediately now, like even Deion Sanders, who just got the job at Colorado, if he doesn't get at least 5 wins this season, Colorado Athletics might be looking at a new coach within 2 years here. So with coaches being forced to win almost immediately, it does make more sense for them to be pursuing these athletes who have college bodies, who know the game, who just know what to do. They know how to act. However, a lot of a good amount of NFL stars these days were under recruited players coming out of high school. Look at Josh Allen or Justin Jefferson or Joe Burrow. If they didn't get the chances they are given, if they didn't get the chances they are given, then they might not have been able to become the superstars we know them today at their respective schools.
I agree with that, but I think we should also look at college basketball, and in that case, it's a much more level playing field between the younger and the older players, where when you look at the NBA draft every year, the vast majority of NBA teams aren't going to want the older players, not because they're not as good, but just because they don't have as high as potential. So I think when we look at that, it's kind of more of an even distribution with college basketball than it is with football. And I think with the way the transfer portal is affecting basketball, it makes everything a little more fair to the schools that may not be able to recruit really high-rated recruits, and they can kind of build off older players year by year. And we're seeing that even out in college basketball, where these small schools with 4- or 5th-year players are really evening the game against schools with 5-star recruits.
And look at Gonzaga with Timmy. He's been there for forever, it feels like. And even look at Kansas State. They had that one recruit who came in from Florida who had the heart attack back in 2020. And he's been having a great season there, and Kansas State's making a deep run right now in the March Madness.
Right, but I feel like we're talking about two different things. Football and basketball are completely different. Like, football, you have to be big, you have to be physical, so the transfer portal makes more sense because, like, you want guys that are bigger and stronger and faster and more athletic. It's more of a physical sport compared to basketball. Like, basketball is physical, yes, but, like, they also don't need guys that are 400 pounds and all muscle to go out there and tackle some linebackers.
It is different. Right, because even we see 18-year-olds go play in the NBA after their one-and-done season in college for basketball. So the transfer portal does give the opportunity for coaches to have better chances at recruiting, because it is a gamble. You never know if this high school athlete's going to turn out. And so it's a lot easier just to take the recruit that is proven. I just think it sucks for the lower 3-star, the 2-star, the 1-star athletes who are getting opportunities to play at better schools taken away from them because they're giving these same roster spots to transfer portal athletes.
Podcast, we'll now play the interview taken with Kentucky cheerleader Andrew Schmidt. Okay, I'm with Andrew Schmidt, a Kentucky cheerleader, talking about NIL. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, my name is Andrew. I am a senior here at UK studying kinesiology, and I am on the cheer team.
All right, being on the cheer team, it's like a smaller sport, whatever. What does NIL look like for you?
For us, it's a little different. So cheerleaders don't really, as far as I know, they don't have much of an opportunity to do NIL. Our role with the university and with athletics is a little different than normal athletes. Student athletes and other sports, like basketball, football, volleyball, all those kinds of sports. You see a lot of them doing NIL deals, but with cheer, we're more so in regards to those sports, we're just on the sidelines cheering them on. So our role in athletics, like we were just added to athletics, 2-3 years ago, is a little different. And so for some of those reasons, I don't think that we're as eligible for NIL deals.
Do you think it should be changed? Do you think that cheerleaders should be able to get a portion of NIL deals?
Yes and no. I think it depends on how you define it. Everybody, NIL is this, brand new thing nationwide, right? So, there's a lot of different thoughts on how it should be implemented and who should get to participate in it. As part of the cheer team, I would say that it would be fair, for cheerleaders to have those benefits and be able to do that. And, we may be able to, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't pursued any NIL deals myself personally, so I'm not aware of any, but, I would say that they should be able to, but at the same time, we're not in the same space, as athletes. We only have like an official competition once a year at nationals in Florida, and that's it. So, outside of that, we're more so at different sporting events for other sports teams. But we are athletes, and I would consider us to be athletes. And under athletics, I do feel that we should have some form of an NIL opportunity.
Do you think, even now that NIL is a thing, do you think that it's ever possible to get a deal in the future?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it kind of goes back to the second question. I'm not fully aware of all the opportunities that NIL offers in regards to cheerleading, but I'm sure it's still a very new thing, within the last 2 years or so. So I'm sure that as it continues to develop and people continue to learn new things about it, and different organizations and brands start to offer these deals to student athletes, I'm sure that there will be more that open up, especially for smaller sports, whether you call that cheer or anything else like that.
And also, do you think the transfer portal is hurting the recruiting in college athletics just in general?
Well, in regards to NIL, since we're speaking on it, I guess you could say that it kind of is. It's one of those situations where it almost turns into a little bit of a professional scene where NIL, athletes can make up to millions of dollars off of national, local, regional advertisements. So, I mean, when you consider what school you're at, if you're a really good athlete at a smaller, even just a smaller D1 school, it may be worth it, considering your financial situation and your goals and your aspirations. It may be worth it to transfer to a larger D1 school, even if you wouldn't be the top athlete on your team, just to make more money and have more potential in bigger market areas, whether that's a bigger city, a bigger university, a more well-known program. So I would say that it defeats the spirit of competing and what we see in college sports traditionally. But it is a good thing, and I would say overall, despite those possible adverse effects, I am in favor of NIL and what it brings to the sport, and what it offers for athletes. And I think that it's been needed for a long time, and that athletes have kind of been taken advantage of, and how their name, image, and likeness have been used, and whether it's the news or video games or photos and videos, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would say that the transfer portal and NIL, that combination can definitely hurt the spirit of college athletics as we've seen in the past.
Okay, and last question. Do you think that there should be a budget on NIL deals, so like the same schools like Georgia's and Michigan's and Ohio State's aren't the powerhouse every single year?
That's a good question. That's another situation where I don't necessarily know enough about the market and the different deals that athletes are signing to really give a well-rounded, logical answer to that. But I would say that it's one of those situations where you can't really. It's the same when you look at like different sports, like men's basketball and football, especially at our school here at UK. They seem to they bring in the most money, so you get more fans, and the athletes get somewhat. People like to say that they get preferential treatment. You see different perks that they may have and stuff like that, and they may tend to get some of those bigger deals. But really, that's just kind of the nature of like how it works to be a fan in college athletics. Some sports have more fans than others, and the same kind of holds true in that nature for different universities, different markets, different schools. So yeah, I would say that it may be fair to have a budget to kind of even that out, but there's only so much you can control in that aspect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for interviewing, Andrew.
What I found interesting about that was that since our cheerleading program here are 24-time national champions, I thought we'd have a lot more NIL deals spread across the team, or maybe one big deal given by a company out to the entire team.
Yeah, I was just thinking that since our cheer team here is so well known, then I was really surprised that they maybe didn't get like a merchandise deal with a local store or anything like that, because I just felt like people would want to see that face, since it really is one of our most successful athletic programs here.
Right, and it's just kind of crazy that they don't have much NIL opportunities, as they still are kind of athletes.
And for our next interview, we're going to interview my longtime friend and former teammate, Maris Talavu, who now plays at the University of San Jose State. All right, so first question. Do you benefit from any NIL money?
Uh, I benefit in it. It just, well, you do and you don't. It just depends what kind of deal you're getting. So, like, for example, so for me at Utah, of course, we had a lot of guys on the team that, more of the starters and star players, especially, what was it? Not this past season, but the season before I left the University of Utah. As the NIL deal was still somewhat new. You had a lot of guys that were mainly starters that had NIL deals, and those deals was mainly for them. It wasn't really so much for the team. It wasn't until probably I want to say more into the season was when we had a company kind of come out and they actually wanted to give us an NIL deal for not just one person but for everybody else, which was pretty cool. So I would say that was probably the only time where I actually benefited from an NIL deal. But I know that there's been a couple guys that's benefit from NIL deals rather than the whole team.
Nice. So you got a little bit of money just because you were part of the team at Utah. What about at San Jose? Do you have any large team deals like that there?
So compared to Utah, especially looking at it conference-wise, coming from Utah and the Pac-12 conference, NIL deals are a little bit more easier just because of the name and the competition and especially the kind of seasons that they had, especially at the time I was there. Because when I was there, we just won a Pac-12 championship. So having that and also the kind of guys that we had on the team, trying to find an NIL deal wasn't that hard. Now being here at San Jose State, I would say it's a little bit. I would say it's more difficult, and it's not even just because of the conference. I would say just because of the school. Now, I'm not saying there's anything bad about the school. I would say it's more of just where the program's kind of heading. I think in the past they weren't really known for winning championships or having winning records. Like just this past, well, actually 3 years ago, they just won their first Mountain West championship, and that kind of got them on the map. Now, as far as NIL deals, they're slowly starting to make their way into trying to get one. But as far as getting one easily compared to Utah, I'd say it's very, very, very difficult.
That makes sense. Just smaller school, smaller conference. Do you think that it's gonna be? Do you think NIL is good for schools like San Jose? Do you think it'll be able to get more recruits in once companies do reach out for your football program?
I think it would. I think it would help our school, but I really think it just comes down to how you use the NIL deal. Now, there's some schools that use NIL deals to get their recruits in the sense of using money. I've seen a lot of articles, I've heard a lot of stories, and I'm sure, and I know me and you, we have a lot of our teammates that play in different conferences, played in Alabama and all that kind of stuff. I've heard a lot of stories just about how people use NIL deal to recruit kids to get the big names over here, and I think it would be beneficial for us. But like I said before, it just comes down to how we use it. Now we can use it for good to help the team grow in terms of trying to get the program out there, trying to put us back on the map and everything like that. But also it can be harmful as we could be using money to bring kids here, but then you can give the kid money and all he cares about the money, but he doesn't really care about performing.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Do you think that with NIL coming into the game or coming into college landscape, it's gonna affect how long kids play? Like, do you think we're gonna see a lot more fifth year seniors? Because of COVID, there's sixth year and even later seniors now. But do you think we're gonna see more, fifth year players?
Just because of COVID, or because
no, just because they're being able to be paid now, and there's less of an emphasis to get to the NFL to make money. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. That's a really good question, and I honestly think that there honestly will be more 5th-year, 6th-year players, especially in college football. Because if you think about it, like before there was an NIL deal, like everybody's goal once they got to college. I mean, I know it's different for everybody. Like it's pretty much guaranteed. Like once you get to college football, it's like the next big thing was the NFL because the NFL was like you can play football and get paid millions. Now it's like with the NIL deal, but NILs now it's like you can get into college football, and if you're a good enough athlete and you're one of the star players or like face of the program, pretty much, you don't have to like get to the NFL to make millions. Like I mean, I'm sure you can look around and see there's a bunch of sophomores, juniors, seniors that are making like millions of dollars, and they haven't even touched. They're not even in the NFL, which is crazy to me. Some of them you may not even heard of, and they're being sponsored by like their uh, local food place or car shop. Just you see guys going around in like Teslas, getting discounts. Like it's really changed the game a lot, and I'm starting to think that with the NIL, I think a lot of people are just going to be okay with just being a college football player only because of just the money aspect. Because it's like, why would I want to go to the NFL when I can just be just a college football player getting paid $5 million or $6 million just to play college football,
Right, and you get your degree, you go out and you get a coaching job somewhere right after, and you have a bunch of money saved up already.
Exactly. Like, there's just no need to go to NFL to play. However, like you can pretty much plan for your future now rather than just okay, I can get to the NFL and then I can start playing. Like you can do that now, which is like really crazy to me.
Yeah. All right. One more question here. Do you think that NIL is beneficial for college football or just the college athletics in general?
Now that part is just really gray because when I when it was in the process of it being brought into the college world, I thought it was a great thing in the sense of like I just saw it as like, oh, the whole team's gonna benefit from it. Now that it's in play, it's like it doesn't have to be the whole team now. It can just be one person. And I think it just comes down to like just the use of it because it's either the NIL deal can benefit one person and the NIL deal can benefit the whole team, and it's just really great because I'm sure there's a lot of teammates and there's some schools out there that have guys that have one player in their team that's making millions of dollars, and then they have another teammate that's maybe struggling just to find another meal or trying to find a place to live, especially for my walk-on guys out there. I've heard a lot of stories with them and their struggles, so it's like I think I would wish that NIL deals were just to the team rather than just the player, but I also understand that why it could be just tied to the player because it's them getting rewarded for their hard work. So there's a lot of pros and cons to it, but I think it can just be beneficial, but it can be also harmful in a way. It just depends on how you go about it or how it's used.
Okay, so maybe the NCAA should step in and set some rules and regulations here in the future. Just because it's so new, I doubt they have anything put in place yet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I just had like a conversation about this when it started. And I think one of the biggest conversation was about like student athletes getting paid more. And I was honestly all on board for that because for me, like, I'm not asking for like 6 figures. I'm not asking to give me $1 million. Like all I'm asking is to just give me a little bit more money for me to get by. It's just like now with NIL deals, like NCAA doesn't really have a say on it so much. There's really not much rules against it just because it's so new. So I think right now with it being so new, I think NCAA is going to see how far this NIL deal could go until all of it kind of like blows up into everybody's face, and then that's when I think that's when people are going to start running back to NCAA to do something about it, which is when they'll finally step in and start setting up rules and stuff on how much money a student athlete can make and how they're going to go about it.
All right. I'm excited to see what NIL has in store for the future of college athletics. Thank you for talking to me today, Maris. Good luck with your season. Good luck with the rest of spring ball. You have a good day.
Appreciate you too. Thank you for having me.
This is all the time we had for today. This has been the Word 111 Sports Podcast. This has been Cater.
I'm Colin.
And I'm Chance.